Welcome, traveler, to part 2 of my spoiler-full review of The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I said that right. Don't know if you guys can see. It's not blood, although it could be. It's purple. Beetroot, sadly. But I like to think that, this book is bloody enough that it's literally bled through the pages. Anyway. So if you haven't checked out my spoiler-free video on the review, check it out. It's my first review of a book. I think I did a job, but it's there. Now, this video, I'm going to, again, try to blast through the things that I really enjoyed and the things that I really didn't enjoy by giving actual, plot points away, spoilers. So if you haven't read it and you want to and you don't want anything spoiled, close this video, watch the other one, because I try not to mess anything up, because I hate spoilers. Don't be one of those people. Here we go. I'm going to spoil everything. So I really like the way the story began, having to go through the exams. Rin has to beat all these people from rich families who have studied these exams, and she crams. And I like the fact that she is a character that isn't, just gifted. She's really good at memorizing, but that's about it. She's not incredibly clever. She's not gifted in any way. She just knows how to cram information, and it's successful. She actually managed to get to the school that's called... What's the school called? Singard. Yeah. She gets to Singard, this big university, where they get to choose all these different kinds of these different kinds of classes. These what do you call them? Topics, subjects. I don't know. But that whole thing was really good. I think the pacing was really good. They did a good job of showing a diversity at this school. The teachers as well are so cool. I loved the military teacher, whose name is Jiha. I think so. Jiha, just an hard military fighter. Again, you see him transform later on, because he comes back later, which is something that R.F. Kuang does quite a lot, is bring characters back. We'll talk about that in a bit. But also the other teacher that she chooses, which is the law teacher. The teacher that she chooses in the end, because of a lot of mishaps and kind of pissing people off that teach there, she has to choose the law master, the law teacher, Jiang. I'm gonna mess the name up. Is it Yang? No, it's probably Jiang. And who's a great character as well. Really funny, really space cadet, drug addict, and just really, there's more to him as he goes on. So the school stuff, and I love the fighting pits. So at one point they go into these pits where the students will fight off each other to prove themselves, in order to be selected. So you have to apply to one of the I nearly had the word, disciplines. Whether it's military or diplomacy or law, all these things. And then after they fight each other in these pits, the teachers will actually select the people that they want to take on as apprentices and to teach. And then a bunch of them just get kicked out because they suck. So I loved all the school stuff. Now, a part that I forgot to mention in the original video was the surgery that she goes through when she's doing the studies and she starts having periods. The cramps are so bad that she can't actually go to class. Now, I understand why R.F. Kuang wrote this, but also I have some issues with it. So obviously she can't miss lessons. She's already a step behind. The martial arts teacher doesn't want her there. And every other student has an advantage. They've already studied for so long. they're already wealthy enough and smart enough, so she can't afford to lose it. Part of me felt like it was kind of shoehorned in to show sort of how merciless she is, or how driven she is to commit to her studies and to be better than everybody else. Throwing away any potential of having a future family, which is pretty awesome in some sense. It's pretty badass, but at the same time, was it necessary? It might play a role later on in the story, but reading it, I had mixed opinions. I liked how very quickly the Federation, the Mugen Federation, just invaded. It was sprinkled through the entire thing that, they might come, they're on the horizon, and then suddenly, you're not even halfway through the book, and they're at the doorstep, and the school suddenly becomes this outpost to defend from one of the main invading armies. I loved how quickly that happened, and the fact that they were all students suddenly become soldiers, and they actually were side by side with actual soldiers who who they compare themselves to, and they're like, well, we're green, they've never even killed anybody, when these other soldiers, they've seen combat experience, or some of them haven't. So I loved that bit. Again, the pacing is great. After that whole invasion situation, they very quickly, she gets recruited into the Sykes, where she is then outposted on this sort of port town. And again, I love the situation. I love the setting, where a lot of people have fled, a lot of people have to stay because there's nowhere else to go, and the battle ships or the boats of the Mugen Federation are just on the horizon. At any point they could attack. Big spoiler here. That first moment where they try to make negotiations, they've just fought off a supply line coming in through one of the rivers, and they've just set fire to everything. They've crushed the enemy, sort of guerrilla warfare kind of stuff, which again, R.F. Kuang is really good at writing these sort of military scenes. It's all quite precise, well thought out. So if you like that kind of, really detailed combat and military strategies, this is great. I really love this bit. But anyway, after they destroy the supply line, the Mugen Federation bring in a negotiator. The defending Nikan think that the war's over, that they've crushed them, they've proven their worth. And the Mugen just like, that was nothing. That's like you've delayed us 2 weeks. We've got hundreds of thousands of warriors waiting. The great part is when they give that gift of, I think it's rice. It wasn't rice. It was salt and sugar. They give a gift of food in these crates, and it turns out it's all rigged. It's just explosives. And the way that R.F. Kuang describes the blast, the aftermath, and the bodies that have been obliterated, the buildings that are falling, even that point where that guy's hanging for dear life, and Rin isn't sure what to do. Even if she called her god, her god is there just to create fire and destroy stuff, and she just doesn't know what to do, and they just watch him fall and explode. So again, loved that bit. It's a super great scene. Similar, I can't remember if it happens before or after, but the Chime, that creature that wipes out the soldiers, that disguises itself as loved ones that you have lost. I love that scene. Now I've got two things about it. So I love the way it was described. I found it quite predictable. I knew that it was going to be that little kid crying, oh no, what are you doing under this wheelbarrow? It's the monster. I caught myself going it's the monster, run away. But sort of kind of predictable, but still quite cool idea. The way it's described, this, and again, bringing in that, Chinese mythology into, sort of Western readership, is totally different. And again, inspiring and kind of creepy. So I loved that scene. Did it serve a purpose? I don't think so. Now, the whole scene where they travel from that seaside port and they travel to Golan Nis, if I'm not pronouncing it incorrectly, the big city that was meant to be one of the last bastions before the Mugen Federation crossed into, the continent that they're on. And they realize that they've been tricked, that actually the Mujin had gone round the back way and they've invaded anyway. It's too late. So they get there. They all rushed to their aid to find, everybody slaughtered. The way that R.F. Kuang describes the brutality of these soldiers, spot on. This is not for the faint of heart. Some of the descriptions, the bodies that are stacked up, babies that have been boiled in pots, really these soldiers, and it happens in war, nowadays it happens, where soldiers will brutalize their victims just because they can, the power of people, and the abuse that they can have. So that whole scene, crazy, really visceral, quite disgusting, but super well written, and it's nice to just see that the heroes, the main characters, they're not always triumphing. They get there, it's too late, and there's this whole long moment where they go, well, what now? They're just one small pack of special warriors with magical powers. How are they gonna stop an entire Federation invasion? So real good moments of despair. Now, one thing I didn't like was how they would bring back characters. I do this in my writing. I don't think there's anything wrong with it where you have reoccurring characters. But the fact that Kitty, who is a great character too, who I'm pretty sure is gay, it's never mentioned, but his behavior, and if that's the case, it's really well written, but it's never hinted at. I'm sure it might come out in the next few books, but the fact that they find Kitty and Venka, who was her childhood rival as well, really pretty girl, quite sassy, from a rich family. The fact that they find them there as survivors, I just found it a little bit too coincidental. If they found one, maybe, but they found both of them, two old school friends, and Kitty is unharmed, basically. He's traumatized, sure, but the thing that happened to Venka, again, I found it powerful. She's obviously been used by the soldiers. She's raped and tortured, and she's made to watch these other women get murdered and used. And I think it's a really powerful thing to convey to the reader, the realities and the brutalities of war. Could it have been done in that way? I suppose if it's secondhand information, it's less intense than reading the live happening of those events. They're horrible, really, really, heartbreaking events happening in this book. But if I'm thinking about it narratively as an author, does it feel like it's been sort of wedged in there to make a point? A little bit. It could have been another person, but they chose the pretty girl who comes from a rich family, who ends up being the victim of these soldiers' abuse. So again, I'm not a huge fan of that. But again, if we're talking about the brutalities and the the power and the message that the author wants to convey, I think it's great. Well done. A few other bits that I wasn't super big fan on was some of the technology that the Mujin use. I understand that it's a fantasy, you can do whatever you want, but I'm sort of a purist when it comes to this. Although I could debate about my own story, there are some elements of maybe steampunk, but but essentially, they use this gas to attack, like nerve gas. It becomes kind of like World War One. The Mujin soldiers have these sort of canisters on their backs, and they're spraying this poisonous, nerve gas kind of thing. They've got gas masks, and I kind of thought, I love the idea of magic and summoning the gods in order to channel them. And then you got this sort of low steampunk kind of technology, as well as when they get captured, by the scientist who'd been doing experiments on Atlan. Again, I kind of got taken out of it. Like, is this really a sort of a medieval-esque fantasy? It suddenly felt like we were in World War One bunker, or World War Two, Nazi laboratory, which is fine, I guess. There's nothing wrong with that, but it just sort of, if things were made of wood or bamboo or I don't know, but it felt like tiles and big metal doors, and suddenly I'm like, is this really fantasy, or are we going into like, I don't know, sci-fi, steampunk? So that was just one little thing that I didn't quite like, but still the characters are great, and I appreciated that step towards their next bit in the mission. The last thing that I sort of have an issue with is probably the pacing at the end. Once they escape that lab and Atlan, detonates himself, which again, I'll talk about this in a moment too, about sort of the predictability and how characters, I'll get onto that. But once he, destroys himself, explodes the laboratory to allow Rin to run to, the Spear Island, that apparently is just across the way, a little splish splash. Sure, she nearly dies, but it's Joe, just swim this way. The pacing gets a little bit weird, and everything seems kind of convenient or coincidental. Oh, we just happened to be here. Oh, we just found this person. The pacing in the end, I wasn't a big fan of. Is it rushed? Maybe a little bit. Is that bad? I'd rather it be rushed than the author really dragging her feet and and drawing out all the details. So it works, but was I a big fan of the ending part? I don't know. She destroys the Federation by going into this temple. She lets the Phoenix in, which is cool. There's a great moment, but then suddenly she goes, I wish the Federation to go away. Nuclear explosion. And then it happens so quickly. And the descriptions are always great. She knows how to write. But it's so final, and then you go, well, that was the big threat of the first book. I guess now the next big threat is, they've unleashed one of the people from that magical mountain that keeps people in. But yeah, I don't know. I just felt like it kind of happened too quickly, and it sort of went nowhere. The last thing I'm going to have an issue with is a lot of things felt really predictable. Now, the things that I don't know if this is because this is what I do. I pick apart stories and I try to figure them out, or if it really was too predictable. So the love situation between was it Nisa? That's sort of the relationship that she starts to kind of build up with Neza and Atlan. Again, that YA feel of who does she choose? And in the end, it does kind of happen that way. She sort of falls for Atlan, which is, he's the big, strong, muscly one who can summon the Phoenix, and they're related, in terms of spearly. That bit was, obviously that was a bit obvious. The thing about Jiang, the Lawmaster, when ages ago I thought, I bet he's one of the three big heroes that are united this place, and he's the gatekeeper. She drops hints about the history, and then I go, oh, I bet it's this guy. Isn't that convenient? And as far as I understood, he is. He can open that portal, and then I think near the end, she's like having visions, and she sees the gatekeeper, and then it's actually Jiang. And I'm like, oh, well, I called it. That was easy to see. The thing about the monster as well, really, really obvious. I could just go, well, that's the monster. And again, some just having recurring characters coming back and go, well, that's obvious. For example, I haven't read the second ones, but I'm sure Atlan is not dead. He might be. Hey, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that he's, he destinated himself, but he's still alive, and now he's going to be used as a weapon against them by the surviving, I don't know, something like that. Yeah, I mean, I feel like maybe Kite eventually is going to turn his back on Rin, and he's going to have to try and defeat her, because they're best friends, and oh no, now she's evil or whatever. So just a few things like that rubbed me the wrong way, and I thought, I get it, and it's a nice feeling. I do it in my writing where I bring characters back at certain moments. Coincidentally, sure, but I feel like it feels a bit more organic. Again, I could be wrong. I could just be an idiot. But that's about it. So my conclusion again, it's great. I really enjoyed it. It was easy to read, fun, brutal. But I'd be really interested to know what your favorite moments were. Any moments that really made you squirm or feel sick. If the next books are actually worth reading. Because I know that they're probably not bad. But I've got other things to read. So leave a comment. I'll try and respond. I'll try and get better at actually, doing timings in my videos. But apart from that, thanks for watching. Safe travels, unless you're in the Poppy War.